right. This is Brothaspeak Podcast, where we interview the innovative, the daring, and the bold with informative topics for the Black LGBT. Anyone who knows me, they know I love the creative side of Black creativity. I love it because of the fact it shows so many facets and so many different sides of us. And I had to get this particular guy. I came across this guy actually on YouTube. Thank God for YouTube. Great platform, and it kind of showed this little icon that came up and said Art House. Didn't know what it was, but I knew that it was actually pertaining to online filming. And let me tell you, I was pleasantly surprised of the content, how it was done, how it was executed, and I had to find out more about this person. So we have an exclusive interview with Mr. Lamont Pierrie. How you doing, Lamont?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me.
No problem. You know, I became very interested in your work once I started finding out more information about some of the things that you do. You're a film director, you're a writer, you're a director, you producer. Are you also a producer with that too?
Yeah, I'm a producer.
All right. And some of the things that I came across, I was quite surprised to, like I said, to be pleasantly surprised about some of the things that you've actually done. And so I just want to kind of get the audience to familiar exactly who you are, exactly what type of things you've done in the past, and just take it from there, okay?
Okay. But I'm a filmmaker. I guess you could say I originated from Tallahassee, Florida, where I went to college, Florida State University. And that's kind of where I honed my writing skills and even my filmmaking skills, because that's where I produced my very first. They call them web series now, but back then they weren't called web series. Independent drama series.
You're a little bit more on the independent side of things in the beginning, I guess you can say.
Yes, and I'm self-taught. Self-taught. Always wanted to get into the film school. Always tried to get into the film school because my college had a film school. But never did. They were extremely selective. Only took a handful of kids every year. And so I was like, you know what? I'm not going to wait. My philosophy in my career, I've realized, has always been, I've never wanted, to wait for somebody's permission to move my career along. You know what I mean?
Completely
agree.
And
even in the beginning, I always felt like, well, damn, if I can't get into the film school, does that mean I can be a filmmaker? Like, nah. I'm going to do this on my own. I'm not going to wait for somebody else's permission. And so that's been, honestly, the philosophy, the kind of like underlying philosophy my whole career, and why I have always been and why I'm still an independent filmmaker, because I just feel like, dude, I'm just not the kind of person that likes to sit and wait for somebody else to give you permission or to green light you anything close to the type of career that you want for yourself. You know what I mean?
Right.
I just work for my personality, for my nature. My nature is, well, if I want it, then I'm going to make it happen for myself. I'm not going to wait for you to see the value in me so that I can have that life, Now, so,
I do like the fact that, number one, you didn't, and that, which is kind of rare. I got to say that's very rare for a person to not have gone to film school to actually become a director, unless you've started out as a talent. In this particular case, it didn't go that way. Have you come across many directors who actually, creators like yourself, actually came across that sort of path? They actually went.
Well, nowadays, just in recent years, it is rare. But I remember when I was, I got started like, 13, 14 years ago. So when I was in college, and when I was in high school and going into college, it wasn't rare. It was the understanding that, even though it wasn't impossible to do it outside of film school, the understanding when I first went, entered college was around 2002, that you probably should go. If you can get into a film program, you probably should go. And then as the independent movement, the independent filmmaking movement kind of shaped itself over the years, the years after, and technology kind of caught up to people's creative desires. Film school ended up being edged out.
Really?
You know what I mean?
I did not know that. Okay.
Yeah, and because it felt very different years ago. It felt like if you can get into a film program, you should try to get into it and do it. But over the years, I really do think it's because technology has caught up.
You
I
know
think
what? I
that
think I agree with you on that. It seems like technology definitely no, because
yeah.
technology's kind of ruled out even the music industry. I actually saw a documentary of how some of the the big studios used to have all these major equipment and certain sounds, and they were very
Yeah.
particular about it. But now, long as you got a laptop, you got a studio.
Yeah. Yeah, and you have the software, then you can kind of teach yourself, and so people can have the debate about if it's really better to be self-taught versus not. But I think nowadays, I really got caught up in once I realized, oh, you mean I don't have to wait for Sony Pictures to buy my script to be a filmmaker. Like I can actually get started on my own and get it to an audience, and I really got caught up in liberation,
Okay.
wrapped
Okay.
up in the independent movement. You know what I mean? It's people's desire to want to feel more in control of their own destiny.
And that
You
makes
know,
sense. That makes total
and
sense.
so I really do think that that is what's happened over the years, and so people want to be free.
Okay, and that that totally makes sense to me, especially when you start seeing even again, I kind of convert back to the music industry of how a lot more major artists are now going independent. So it seems
Yeah,
like they have a lot more creative control. They're able to see a little bit more fruit from their own labor.
yeah.
And now one of the biggest things that what gave me more attention to you
Hmm.
is because of several of the web series that you have created, and I've doing my research, and everybody knows I do my research. When it came down to
Some people don't. Right?
and that's the thing. I kind of surprise people sometimes. So when it came down to
I
the
love it.
award-winning web series Freefall, and
Yeah,
it kind of cast you in a different light. It was that the one that you can actually say was that particular series that kind of gave more attention to Lamont Pierre.
oh man, that series. I mean, this is a grand statement to make, but I'm not trying to be grandier,
Of course.
but I do believe that series changed the course of my career, um, because I never had a hit
Okay. Okay.
prior to that. Never had a hit. I never had something that was just getting so many eyeballs on it. And we were on the web with that series, and so it just it just raised the bar, in a lot of ways for my career and even how I looked at my career. For all that Project Imperfection, it definitely did that.
Now let me ask you this, because by you coming in, not that much experience in terms of filmmaking, didn't go to filmmaking school, and learning this stuff on your own.
Mm.
Number one, that had to be a challenge in itself. What would before free fall? Because I want to kind of bring it to bring it. We're going to convert back to free fall for a minute. Before free fall, what was your first project like?
Well, actually, I guess I should clarify the record. I didn't go to film school, but I honestly feel like I did because I did a work study in college,
Okay.
a year-long work study at film school at my university, and so by working right there in the film department amongst all the film students, like one of my best friends is came from that film program. I met her there. So in a lot of ways, I feel like I did go through their film program for a year because I was right there amongst the students, helping to supervise their projects and all like right there. And so that really gave me a really good foundation. You know what I mean? Like I got to learn a lot of things that I would have learned if I had actually been a student. So in a sense, I got some sort of a formal, education because if you know anything about like a structured university film school program, like it is rigorous. It is precise. You know, and you just it's such an education. So prior to Freefall, I did have that work study experience, and then I had done several projects prior to Freefall. I mean, Freefall is a lot of people don't know this unless they've done their research, but Freefall is actually like my sixth.
Your sixth?
Sixth, seventh, somewhere around there. It was actually that, so I'd done several projects prior to that, including a project that had just ended called My Brother's Keeper, which I did for 7 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I did it, and I started that was the project that I started in college, and then it went on up until when I moved to LA, and we continued it in Los Angeles. I also did a couple short films that had played at several film festivals, and I had just completed before doing Freefall, I had just completed my very first feature film.
Now, this is interesting. So this now that I could not see.
Right.
This is basically from you coming and being engulfed in being immersed in the actual film department of the university and seeing how things go. So that in itself, you're right. That in itself is a university. But you took the move to LA, and you've been doing this particular series for 7 years. First off, what was the platform? Were you also online at that time?
Let me see. We did My Brother's Keeper, and I started in college, so that's like late 2005 when I did that one, and then I did that for the rest of my college years, so went on for like 3 more years there, and then I did a couple like short films in addition. During that same time, I attempted to start my first feature at that time, but it kind of fell apart. After that takes us to like 2008. I actually moved to New York, where I am now. And that was when I did my internship turned, job with Lee Daniels on Precious. So getting back to the whole training thing, I also consider that experience part of my film training because that was the most up close experience. I mean, I feel like that's like the most up close experience you can get, when you're literally working, alongside a big producer like that who's about to have a hit film.
Exactly.
So that was very educational, and I remember being frustrated working with Lee Daniels, or while I was there working with them, because I was like, it's kind of cool. He's getting ready to have. I remember telling him that Precious was going to be my generation's The Color Purple,
Okay.
But I was like, dang, I don't have any time to work on my own stuff because I'm here working for this guy.
Right.
And so when that was over in 2008, like late 2008, I moved to LA.
Gotcha.
After that.
Gotcha.
And then LA, I just continued. I continued the one background project, My Brother's Keeper, and then I produced some short films. That was my first time. That was when DSLRs were just becoming popular, and like around 2009, and so all my new stuff was now like the production value, the quality of the camera, even though the cameras were so small, was so amazing. So we were caught up in like the DSLR revolution at that time, and I produced some short films, produced my feature film, Talking with the Taxman About Poetry, and that takes us all the way to 2012, and that is when I finally did Freefall.
Now, wait a minute. Now, when it comes to, because it seemed like you definitely had the opportunity to definitely be among some heavy hitters like Lee Daniels himself, but when it came down to, going the path in which the type of film that you were going to be doing, did you always want to focus on LGBT?
No. No. I cannot say that enough. Not no. To to be insulting in any way.
Right.
But I never thought that I've never thought I would ever do a project like Freefall ever.
So wait a minute.
Ever,
so what?
Ever.
What made you go this direction?
Well, by 2012, I had been, in the industry since, like around 2005.
Okay.
And so by then, 7 years, I was living in LA. I lived in LA for a few years leading up to 2012. And by then, I was very frustrated with my career.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, what I've been doing all these years, I don't feel like it's really, even though I've had some bright spots.
Yeah.
I feel like it wasn't working. I thought that I was gonna be one of the youngest Black filmmakers to have a feature film come out. Then I realized, oh, Lamont, you're getting older, so that's not gonna happen. It's just like things were not happening the way that I wanted for my career. I just knew I was gonna be like the next Spike Lee, the next John Singleton. that was what was in my and next Lee Daniels. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so by 2012, I was looking around my career is not going. I just walked away from a distribution deal that I thought was going to be game changing in my career, but it ended up not being the right situation, and I was just frustrated.
Yeah.
And so I moved out of LA. I left LA. I thought I was just taking a quick few weeks break out of the city and going back east because that's where my family is from. So I just wanted to just have some downtime.
Yeah.
And I ended up staying, and then I remember being after a couple of weeks of being on the East Coast on this break, I thought I was just going right back to LA. On this break, I got bored, and I was like, man, okay, I need something creative just to do while I'm here.
Yeah.
Until I feel well enough to go back to LA and get back into the grind. And me and a friend of mine, I had an idea for a show, and I pitched it to a friend of mine, and he was like, oh yeah, that would be cool to do. So me and him together kind of developed this Freefall story, and I said, well, and I was in North Florida,
okay.
which is where my family specifically was. And I was like, well, we'll do this project, but we'll shoot it out of Atlanta, because Atlanta was only 4 hours away.
Okay.
And Atlanta, of course, as everybody knows, has more of a film community, film industry there. So I said, we'll shoot it out of Atlanta. We'll find our actors there. We'll shoot it there, and then we'll just do this project. And I was really looking at the project as just something to do, as an experimental. Let me just do something that I've never done, because I was telling myself, all right, Lamont, if you keep doing what you've always done, you're going to keep getting the same results. So maybe you should do something different career-wise, and then maybe you'll start to see different results. And so that's what led me to this Freefall idea, and then deciding to produce it. So then I had found some actors in Atlanta, one actor that I already had worked with. And we shot 4 episodes, and we put them out. I think we put them out around Christmas time of 2012. And it took off. We put it on the web.
Yeah.
And it just took off. And I was like, what the hell is happening?
Yeah.
And I was like, and I had really, originally with that project, I really threw away all of my normal processes, and I said, okay, I'm going to approach this project like I've never approached any of my previous projects, and I'm going to see what the results are, and I'm going to see how I feel. And so I did a lot of things that I wouldn't ordinarily do production-wise. Things were very minimal, and I wasn't that concerned about the quality of the acting. I wasn't that, wrapped up in, okay, my shots and really making them what I always, giving them the type of attention that I've always had.
Yeah.
I said, I'm just going to just go, okay, it looks different. I'm just going to go with it. And, and so when I put out the project, I actually didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. I thought it was the worst piece of crap that I'd ever created. And what I told myself is, I said, okay, well, you taught yourself a lesson. So now you know to stick with your normal formula, mind. Don't go outside your box, because when you go outside your box, you don't even like your results.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So that's why you should. So that taught me to trust my instinct.
Gotcha.
And that was, I guess, something that I needed to teach myself, you know?
Right.
But despite me not liking this project, the project was catching on.
Wow.
It was finding an audience. And so here I am, like, you know, we'd released all 4 episodes, and I remember I was putting together a larger production company with 2 of my business partners at the time.
Yeah.
And so we were just getting that off the ground, and we were trying to plot out what projects we were going to do, what we were going to, you know, do first for the company. And they were like, okay, so Lamont, so you did this project Freefall, so you're going to continue it, right? And have it be a part of the company. And I was like, no. I was like, I'm not continuing the project. It's a crap. I hate it, you know? And it was my business partners who said, well, Lamont, you have an audience now. By then, our episodes had, you know, were receiving like 30, 40, 50,000 views.
Yeah.
You know, just, you know, a couple weeks. And so I was like, I don't know if I want to continue that project, because I did not feel like that was, I didn't feel like it was really me as an artist. I didn't feel like it was something that I just did, you know, and I did it with a collaborator, which I don't usually work with like a co-writer, you know?
Yeah.
And so that was the first time that I did it, even though this person was my friend. I kind of, you know, I was not the Nazi that I usually am about my art with that project, working with a collaborator. I was just like, okay, whatever, you like that, okay, we'll do it. And so to have a successful project about something that you don't even like is a very weird feeling.
Wow.
It's like you can literally feel yourself like split into 2 conflicting parts inside. You know, it's a weird feeling to have a hit. You know what I mean? I finally understood what it's like when people in like the music industry, when they talk about, man, I had a hit song, but I hated that song. It's a weird, I understand what that feeling is like, because that's how I felt about that project. We had this hit, but I hated it.
Well, let me ask you this. Is it because of the fact, because when I started to think about it, I remember years ago, Dr. Dre said he hated 187 when it came down to the song with Snoop Dogg. But it shot to number 1. Now, could it have been because of the fact that the audience that you were serving was very underserved, and that became why?
Yes, that's exactly what it was. That's exactly what it was. Freefall, for everything that I feel about that project and felt about that project initially, I did understand why it was a hit, even though I didn't really, it wasn't a great feeling, because I was like, this is nowhere near my best work. And I had just done like a few projects that were, you know, disappointing in terms of the exposure that they got and the attention that they got. So, and those were the projects that I really felt that I really believed in. So then to turn around and do something like Freefall, and I was like, this was just a little thing I did just to, you know, pass some time.
Right,
you know?
right.
I ended up feeling like, damn, like, so y'all didn't like what I was presenting you know, before, but you like this, which was like a half effort. And I really started to feel like, well, damn, like, do I have to like dumb down my work now to get across to a larger audience? Like, I was really conflicted.
Yeah.
And so I did understand that, you know, Freefall was serving a very underserved audience at that time. You know, we were one of the first Black LGBT web series out there. There were a few prior, but we ended up being the biggest at the time.
And why do you think you became the biggest?
I think it was just I think it was the fact that we were doing the concept was different, the premise was different, and for some reason I think a lot of people felt like our characters were more relatable than the few projects that had come prior to us.
Okay.
You know? Okay. And Freefall had like an edge to it, and then, you know, some of our production was pretty tight. Like when it came to like our cinematography, like that was always pretty tight. That's one of the things that we were known for. or I guess that I've been known for in my work. And I think it just appealed, in a few different ways to the masses. Like I really am one of those people that believes that you cannot predict a hit.
You're right.
I just believe so. It is literally it's half of it is luck anyway. You know what I mean? Like timing is part of it, timing of culture at the time. Like, so it just happened at the time that a chord needed to be struck in certain ways. You know what I mean? So when I take credit for Freefall, I can only take half credit for it because I can't take credit for it doing what it was meant to do.
Now,
and so moving on. So eventually, my business partners convinced me to keep going with the project. And at the time, I was really wrapped up in HBO's show The Wire, even though it was already off the air by then. But I was like really into it. I was watching it a lot, and I just was really into like crime drama. Oh, and then the fact that Freefall was like, well, it didn't start off as a crime drama, but I changed it into a crime drama, and decided to keep doing it. And then the show ended up going for 4 years, 3 seasons, and 46 episodes, I think.
Yeah.
46 episodes.
Wow.
Yeah.
And this, just so people know, this hit over 1 million views, and it was.
It eventually hit over like about 3 million.
Wow. I'm so sorry. 3 million views.
Yeah.
Now, is this considered to be the highest rated LGBT series online?
Okay. Nobody's going to give me my credit for that, okay? And I'm not even trying to be funny. I just it'd be nice to like get our props for it, but I have run the numbers. I have run everybody's numbers over the years. Even, some of the recent shows that have come out, like About Him, which was a big hit the year that it came out in Black LGBT like media, and in a few of the other shows. But in my estimation, okay,
give yourself credit. Go ahead.
Freefall is still the biggest in terms of numbers and in terms of longevity.
Now, I'm going to ask you this question now. I'm going to ask you this question because I want to make a comparison here, because for some reason, since you mentioned About Him, now, when I look at your work, and first off, I do want to, get to the name of the production company, but when I go to look at About Him, it made me question the content that is necessary for an LGBT film online to be popular. Does it need to have an excessive amount of nudity in order to be respected within the LGBT? Now, when I look at your work, I don't get that impression at all. And honestly, I think the reason why I attract to that much better, it does not focus on just one aspect of the LGBT community. Now, What are your views on that?
Okay, well, the main thing that I can say, and this is something that people can take a shade if they want to, right? I did not care. But I mean, the main difference is when you have like, I am a writer first.
Okay.
I am not a titleist.
Okay.
First, I am not a pornographer. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, I am a writer first. And so when you are a writer, when you went to, when you've trained as a writer in school and you have formal story comes first.
Gotcha.
So if you have a good story, it doesn't leave a lot of room for you to try to figure out gimmicks to try to get people to, to take to what you're presenting them. You know what I mean?
Right.
I always felt like I don't have to show skin if I can tell a good story.
Very good
so,
line. Okay.
And it's funny because I was doing an interview last year with this site, Cypher Avenue, and I'd had like a love-hate relationship with them over the years. they've been like nice and they've been nasty, and and you never know which way they're gonna come at you.
That's cipher.
The last interview that I did with them, the interviewer said to me something that I didn't really realize, but he said, "Well, Lamont, he's like, it's funny because we've been so hard on you and that show, Freefall in particular, over the years, but to see where the Black LGBT genre has progressed to over the years since Freefall, he was like, oh man, like we were way too hard on you guys because we see where what you started and we see where they took it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And he said to me, he was like, if you remember in the very first episode of Freefall, we call that those first 4 episodes, the preseason.
Gotcha.
And those episodes they're not like out there anymore because I hate those episodes and I feel like they were not indicative of how I kind of changed the show into a crime drama.
Gotcha.
But anyway, the very first scene of the very first episode of Freefall ever was a sex scene. And it was the two guys in bed having sex, but it was from the chest up, and it was comedic. Like it was real, like this real awkward like sex scene that we were shooting, and they were like totally not like characters were like, like one was faking it and the other really thought he was putting it down. So it was like kind of comedic, and but it was very, by today's standards, it was very tame. But I remember at that time, that was controversial back in 2012.
Right.
Like, me doing scenes like that. It was like, whoa, what the hell is this show? Like the very first scene, they're doing it. So then I really, and the interviewer was telling me, he was like, I think that people took that scene because he was like, I feel like you were pushing the envelope at that time. But he feels like when other creators saw that scene, they felt like, oh, okay, so I have to go further in order to, that's the bar. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so that's why almost everything that came after Freefall goes so much further. You know what I'm saying? And it's like everybody keeps trying to like one up each other. And at a certain point in time last year, I was like, you know what? I don't even really want to be associated with this genre anymore because you guys a lot of people, these creators have taken the LGBT, storytelling genre, like web series genre, and really taken it to a place where there's just no respect anymore.
Right. Right.
So last year I was like, I'm not doing this shit anymore. So y'all can have it. I'm gone. You know? And so, even though I didn't totally mean that, that's how I felt at the time. But you have people who have not studied, to answer your question, you have people who have not studied the craft of filmmaking. They haven't studied the craft of storytelling, even if you're self-taught. That's what people are today. I don't know if it's my generation, but the young generation coming up today, even though they are very innovative and they're very independent-minded, what you have to remember is that even if you're self-taught, you have to remember you still have to be thorough, and you have to be diligent, and you have to really teach yourself your craft, not just the part of the craft that's going to get the attention quickly. So these people, you have creators who are not studying films for good stories. They're not studying films for good cinematography and not just good cinematography, but cutting edge cinematography, like bring something new to the game.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Because of shows like Freefall and some other shows who had some success online, people just kind of like took the most salacious elements of shows like that and made their own shows out of it, but they didn't study the other elements that made it a good show and why it was resonating.
So in other words, they kind of dumbed it down. They dumbed it down.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's why you have what you have now. So even like nowadays, there are some projects out there that are good, but you don't know about them because now the audience has become conditioned to expecting no clothes, and now they're actually doing sex acts
Oh,
in
God.
these web series.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, wow, like how do you have and then Moonlight comes along, which was such a a beacon of light
Yeah.
for LGBT media, specifically LGBT Black media. And I'm like, okay, so you had shows like Freefall before. Then you come out with a movie like Moonlight, which is, you know, an Oscar-winning film. How do you still create the kind of bullshit that you're creating? Like, the bars have been set. Like, what are y'all doing? Like, y'all have no problem scraping, like, you know, scraping the bottom of the barrel to
Right.
put out just any old thing. Like, come on. Like, what about putting out greatness? What about putting out art? You know, but these content creators, I have learned, because a lot of them are out of Atlanta, and I used to live in Atlanta. They do not care about the artists.
Wow.
They do not. When I tell you, like, there was a point where, like, I was producing like the last season of Freefall actually ended because I was like bowing out of the game.
Gotcha.
Because I was like, nah, like we would probably still be producing Freefall if things hadn't changed so much, you know. But there was a time where I was producing a few LGBT shows all at once. I had Freefall, Kaleidoscope, Miles and Kyle, Redskin, and I had, you know, the talent that I had on those projects. Then I started seeing that the talent that I was working with started to work with all the other talent in the city that was producing these, you know, LGBT web series. And I was like, now y'all are trying to just recycle talent? Like, y'all just want people, like, everybody's fine with seeing the same people in every project and every show. Like, I was like, what the hell is this? I said, you know what? I'm going to stop here. I'm going to just stop right here. And I bowed out. I ended all those projects. I moved out of Atlanta. I said, I want no parts of it, because this is not what I built originally. You know what I mean? And even though some people have tried to bite off of, you know, my style with Freefall and a couple of others, I'm like, take it to the next level then if you're going to do it. You know what I mean? And, like, if you're going to, you know, continue this genre on, at least, you know, make it better than what I did with it.
Right.
And the fact that you guys aren't interested in that, I was like, I don't even want to be associated with the rest of the genre.
Wow. So you
I
really,
guess, hopefully, in a nutshell, I've answered how I feel about
well,
myself versus, you know.
it definitely sounds like you did. It definitely sounds like you did. I mean, because there was one particular article you mentioned, Love Jones, because I thought, to me, Love Jones, it was not LGBT, but Love Jones was a type of film that I thought I want to see more Black films like that.
Yeah.
And, you know, one of the things that really attracted me to your stuff, your projects, was because of the fact it did have many elements of that, but also what I saw was elements of heat. If you remember the movie Heat, I saw the cinematography. Yeah. I saw certain scenes that came across very realistic. So I saw cinematography is your biggest thing. You definitely gave and cast it in a much more respectable light. And when I looked at, you know, how even with now, there was a recent thing I posted not that long ago when it came to Insecure, and how even light is cast on Black characters. And to me, those are the beautiful elements, along with a nice storyline that did not have to have so much sex. And the greatest part about Moonlight was because of the fact it did not contain sex. It didn't have to have the sex in order to really pull people in a respectable, and to really people to love that and cherish that film. And that was one of the things that really pulled me in. So, especially when I saw Redskin, a beautiful cruel thing, Ghost of Fort Greene. Those are the things that, for me, that's what I look for.
I'm going to make a statement that I feel like should be controversial, even though it probably won't be. But I really, it's going to probably sound horrible to some people, but I really do think this is an absolute fact based on all my years of producing LGBT content featuring Black characters, black stories, and kind of the Black LGBT experience, or facets of it. The overall Black LGBT community does not care about art.
Wow.
That is what I learned.
Oh, man.
Does not care about art. And that was probably the hardest lesson that I had to learn in all the years and all the projects that I've done. You know what I mean? Because you can even factor in, I don't know if you know anything about my feature film, Talking with the Taxi Man About Poetry, but the main character in that is a gay character. He's a gay intellect,
yes.
right? Who likes poetry and all that. That's what I learned, man. That's what I learned. I was like, and when I started, like if I knew, it sucks to say this, but if I knew what I knew now about the Black LGBT world and the LGBT world at large, like the mainstream LGBT world, there would be no Freefall.
Wow.
I would never have done it. I would never have wasted the time, the energy, the resources, the stress, nothing, you know what I mean, over the years. And I've produced, half of my filmography are LGBT stories and projects and films and shows. But if I knew what I knew now about that world and about the smaller Black LGBT, media world, I wouldn't have even dipped my toe inside of it at all. I would have just stayed outside of it, because they don't care about the things that I thought they cared about. In the real world, there's a very large, like a big part of the mainstream audience cares about, good storytelling. You know what I mean? Films and TV shows that are groundbreaking. You know what I mean? And they big up those projects. You know what I mean? They support them. They give them the acclaim. You know what I mean? In the LGBT world, the mainstream LGBT world, you only get recognized if you're white.
Wow.
Okay? So no matter how good you are, they're only going to recognize you if you're white. You could send them your stuff till you're blue in the face, until your email collapses. They do not care because you're not white. Okay? And if you're not there trying to fraternize with them, if you're not hanging around GLAAD, trying to get in good with them, nobody cares what you're doing if you're featuring stories of people of color and all. They don't care. Okay? Then the smaller subset, the Black, LGBT community, they do not care about art.
Wow.
So they just do not, anything that comes out that does not have a sex scene in it, does not have your characters with their shirts off and all of that, they don't care. Why would they want to do a screening? Why? Who cares, about the story? And I'm gonna say this last thing and I'll shut up about it. The irony of it all is that all you tend to hear about the larger LGBT community and even the Black LGBT community, when you hear whoever the influencers are, all you hear is how much they want better representation, better stories, better, and I'm like, it's out there. You guys just aren't featuring it. So it makes a creative not want to produce anything.
Wow.
Because I am trying to give you what you say you want. You say you want more films with Black LGBT, male characters. You say you want, stories that, a non-LGBT audience can would like and appreciate and all that. And then when we give them to you, you say they're boring. You say they're too artsy. You say there's not enough sex. And so it's like, well, damn, what am I wasting my resources trying to produce this content for you that you say you want, but you don't really want and you don't support?
This is, part of me says this, because even as a podcaster, as I definitely...
I know you have to feel it, yeah.
Yeah, I feel some of the things that you're saying, because what I've noticed, especially between my podcast and many other podcasts out there, if you're not talking about sex, dick, and ass and booty, your subscription following it doesn't go as swift. But one thing I notice is that there is still an audience. There is still an audience. The audience is there. It's just the fact that
they're smaller.
There are smaller, or
yeah.
we just choose our time and place to have something to eat. For instance, for right now, I may just want something quick, fast, and easy. I'm going to eat that McDonald's. But when I want to feel in a fine, enjoyable mood, I'm going to basically go to a sit-down restaurant to where I feel in a good company, getting great service. So I think everything has its place. You may not go to that sit-down restaurant very often, but because more convenience is that McDonald's, which you know is not very nutritious. You know it's not the best tasting food, but you go because it's there. And it satisfied that quick little hunger. But you know when it comes to those particular moods, you're going to have a nice sit-down restaurant and go to a Ruth Chris. You're going to go to one of those high-end restaurants to make yourself feel better because everything has its time and place, you know? And I know what you're saying.
I do agree with that. I'll tell you what for me, the nail in the coffin was about how I felt about it all was with Moonlight. I always felt like and said, okay, so here you have this film, which is really when you break it down to its most basic thing, it is a gay black film.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
Okay. So that's the most direct audience for a film like that because of what the movie's about. Right. That film was mostly supported outside of the LGBT community,
just like ATL,
and mostly, it supported mostly outside of the black LGBT community. You know what I mean? It was more so a hit. It made most of its money outside of the audience that it was probably made for, just going off the story.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So that right there is the most, like, you can't get a more, like, if you have people in the community, no matter what their tastes are, everybody wants, more stories, more representation. You know what I'm saying? So you can't get much more of an example of that than what they did with Moonlight. And then to have exactly what, everybody's asking for actually produced on a high scale for millions of dollars, and then it wins the Oscar. So it's really like, this big deal, but you don't have it supported by the people that it was made for and the people it was made to affect. To me, it's like, well, damn, that's like you being stranded in the sea, and the helicopter comes to rescue you, and you send the helicopter away.
Right.
To me, it's like, y'all don't want the help that you're asking for. So this is why we probably should not be wasting it. As much as, we would like to have more LGBT images. I'm sure the community would like to have more LGBT images and all that. But you don't want it. Why would we create it? You know what I mean? You still have people who go, why can't they bring back Noah's Ark? You know what I mean? When Noah's Ark was out, Noah's Ark got so much backlash from the community. People don't really remember this, but Noah's Ark was polarizing at the time. It was not a thing where people felt like, oh my gosh, yes, finally, like you had a subset of people who felt like that. But I remember that show getting a lot of backlash. And then eventually it got canceled. But now, 10 years later, or however long it's been that it's been off the air, people are like, oh man, I wish that they would bring it back. Yeah, but are you really going to support it if it does happen? Like I really do think that there's a hypocrisy. That's really what I'm trying to say. Bottom line is there is a very big hypocrisy, which when I'm reading, LGBT press or I'm listening to podcasts, people are not talking about this. But there is a hypocrisy dead at the middle of the LGBT community at large and the black LGBT community, because you want one thing, but when you have what you say you want, you don't support it or you don't want it. It's just like, why there's so many people who want to be in relationships, but they're single, but they would really like to have a relationship, and they say that this is the kind of person they want, and then when that person comes into your atmosphere, you don't give them any attention. It's like, can we address the hypocrisy here? Like, because it's a problem.
Wow.
It's a problem. And
that
it does go beyond just media. You know
it
what I
does.
mean? Like, I think there's
does.
an inherent problem in the psyche of, and I'm gonna, speaking from the, perspective of generalizing, like, generalizing the whole group, because there are exceptions, of course, but generally speaking, there is a really big problem with hypocrisy between what LGBT people say they want versus what they really will take, And so on the outside of it, if you're anybody on the outside of it, or if you're somebody who is trying to do something progressive, you know what I mean, on the outside of it that can positively impact the group, you're sending mixed messages to those people. Because, a lot of the shows that I've made, well, really all the shows I've made have been from thinking, okay, this is something that could positively impact the community if it were to catch on. You know what I mean? So when I'm thinking of things that I want to create as a storyteller, I have lots of choices. Yeah, I have, I can pull stuff from the gutter, or I can pull stuff that's going to be elevated. You know what I mean? I do have a choice,
Right.
And I've always chosen to do what I've ended up producing. But I could just as easily do the other shit if that's what you really want to support. You know what I mean? So it's like the LGBT community really needs to make up its mind about what it really wants. That happens.
I gotta say something that I believe when I had my interview not that long ago, it's gonna be coming out very soon, with Fly on Red, and he said something
That's
that made a lot of sense, and he said the LGBT is dictated by the heterosexual community. If the heterosexual community likes it, they jump on it. And
yes.
I
agree with that.
You do agree with that?
I do agree with that. I think if because when we did season 2 of Freefall, we changed because we did 10 episodes for season 1, we did 4 episodes for the preseason. When we got to season 2, I created this whole campaign called Freefall Season 2 Mission Mainstream. Because by then, after doing the show for, at that point, like a year and a half, coming up on 2 years, I had figured out that in order for the show to get bigger, in order for the show to get basic support, you know what I mean, I felt like, well, we have to get the mainstream stamp of approval. Because I can't get this show any bigger, even inside of the LGBT community. I can't get it bigger in the community. You know what I mean? Unless I get some sort of mainstream like stamp on the show. So that season we added white characters. You know what I mean? We made the cast, the supporting cast, not the main cast, the supporting cast a little bit more diverse. And our marketing was very different that season, because I was like, okay, that like we need that support even to validate us to our most direct audience.
Right.
So I do agree with that, in a lot of ways. I definitely agree with that, and that's part of the hypocrisy that I'm speaking of in the LGBT community. That's part of the hypocrisy. It's almost like there is a, I'm going to use this example. I haven't really talked about this yet, but how when, with gay people, when they come out, everybody has that process, whatever it looks like, where they just accept themselves. You know what I'm saying? There's a liberation there. There's a freedom there that they feel when they do that, right? What I have noticed is that liberation and that freedom is not as authentic as we even think it is ourselves when we're doing it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because I think at the root of it, there is still a lot of self-consciousness, a lot of lack of acceptance of self-identity. You know what I mean? But to the world, we present it as if we've gone over this huge hurdle that's kind of like fixed all our problems,
Right.
But it's kind of like it's an illusion, and I don't even know if that makes any sense. But I tie that to the issue that you mentioned that Fly on Red mentioned, that there is, and that I was talking about with my content. There is it's like there is still a desire or a need for some sort of acceptance from somewhere, as opposed to really being totally, confident and in yourself and who you are and what you're about. You know what I mean? So in a roundabout way, I definitely am saying that I agree with just that there's still that desire for this validation from an outside source before you can even really, accept you or the stuff that's yours, including your content. Like, it's not valid to you unless them over there think that it's dope, think that it's valid. And that's a problem that I really do wish that the LGBT community would really address, because I've pulled out of the producing content for the community in a lot of ways for those very reasons, because the support, despite all the numbers that we get, the support really is not really there. There's a subset, that's there. You talked before about you wanted to get to the name of my company, the Art House. The Art House, Art House is if anybody knows that term, Art House, that is actually a niche, like, group of people. It's a niche. And so what I've realized is that, Lamont, so your content actually is not for the any mainstream community, whether it's the mainstream community, or the mainstream LGBT community, or the mainstream Black LGBT community. You actually have a very particular type of person that likes and supports your work, and that's who you make content for. And I've learned to be happy with that. You know what I mean? Okay. I've learned that, no, I'm not going to win over the whole community with a particular project like I used to think I could.
Right.
Right. And the numbers that we're all getting, they can be really elusive. You know what I mean? They can give the impression that we're getting all this kind of support, but when I tell you that's not really real. The people who are really making the money are the people who are selling sex. No, let me not say that, because we're making money over here. Let me not deny that. But making a lot of money, a lot of like really, 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 really good money, consistent good money, are the people who are pushing, the sex and all of that. And that's who, a lot of people are supporting,
right.
For whatever reason. So anyway, I'm sorry. I know I just went off on.
No. Let me tell you. I mean,
there's a connection there somewhere.
The thing about it is, what you're speaking of is exactly what a lot of people do feel when it comes to certain aspects. Like I said, I know over my podcast, I've actually, when you start comparing other podcasts, you begin to see, exactly the same elements. And it seems to me that a lot of people are saying the same exact thing. So I completely get it. I completely understand what you're saying. So now, bringing up to date now, because, the content that you have produced, I definitely love. But where does that leave Lamont Pierrie now?
It's funny because, we were talking a lot about, like, what I do and what some of the other folks that have produced LGBT content have done. I just got back from Sundance.
Yes.
A couple weeks ago, Sundance Film Festival in Park City, Utah. And it's so funny because if I'm like on my Twitter or on my Instagram or something, and I, post out, oh my God, like I'm going to Sundance, or I'll be at Sundance, and, isn't that dope? That's lost on the majority of my audience. They don't get it. Like, why is Sundance? Like, who cares about Sundance? What is Sundance? Why is it relevant to you? Like, and so I say that to say stuff like that is really the heart of who I am and the heart of my career. You know what I mean? I never intended to be this LGBT content creator, this LGBT filmmaker. I never wanted to be, Patrick Ian Polk, all hail to him. Like I never wanted to be this figurehead in the LGBT community. You know what I mean? And the only reason why I continued making LGBT projects over the years is just because I had a demand for it with my audience base. In a lot of ways that has made me look in their eyes like I'm not the average filmmaker out here who's trying to move his career along and get his script sold to Hollywood or make a big feature film that goes to Sundance or Cannes or something like that. So what I learned is that like the Black LGBT audience, most of them, they don't see you like they see other filmmakers in the world, whose content is on TV or whose content is in the theaters. They see you as if you're not that. And I hate that. And I've been trying to push against that to show that no, like I'm not here just to get views on YouTube. That's not why I started doing this. Like I started this to be a real filmmaker. You know what I mean? And just because you know me off the web does not mean that that's the totality of who I am as an artist, as a brand, as a company, all that stuff. And so I started pivoting away from doing as much LGBT stuff because I feel like, in addition to the stuff that we just mentioned, the issues that I have with it, or with that world, a lot of, it's funny because I tell people this, and they don't get this, especially my fans. Whenever you've seen LGBT content being produced by myself or my company, I always had non-LGBT stuff out at the same time.
Oh.
Like I was always producing non-LGBT stuff at the same time.
Interesting.
But I have built this audience base that mostly, I won't say only, mostly wants to see LGBT stuff. So my network, for example, we have a YouTube channel that has 44,000 subscribers, which I know is not a whole lot, but it's decent. So when I post one of my other shows, when there's a new episode coming out, do my fans flock to see that? No, they don't, because it's not LGBT.
Now, now even when it comes to that, okay, because sometimes, I know when it comes to engaging and knowing your follower, because even though a lot of people may actually follow you or not necessarily, they love your film, they don't necessarily engage to tell you exactly what they're looking for. Do they? Right, do your audience always speak to you, or do you engage with your audience so therefore you know exactly it's coming directly from the horse's mouth?
We have always been, I can't say this for my company and my brand and myself personally, because I'm the one who runs all of our social media and everything. We have always done a really, really excellent job with engaging with the fans.
Okay. Like
we go and talk to them directly. And like on our YouTube channel, like I'm kind of known as they think I be clapping back at some of the fans. I respond just that much, and sometimes I have to respond in a not like nice way if somebody's being disrespectful. But I the fans know that I talk back. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I used to do a thing for a few years, where I would also position, my actors, the cast, to interact, and I used to always tell them, interact with the fans. And my cast have always been very good at interacting with the fans. You know what I mean? Whether it's something sanctioned by me or, just them on their own time in their own social spaces doing it. They've always been really good at that. So I've always tried to say, this is who we are. Like, we're not just like, I never let people call my company an LGBT company or an LGBT network, because we're not. But you would never know that if all my hits are just the LGBT shows. You know what I'm saying? So when I tell people, if I'm interviewing with, like an LGBT, media outlet, or even vice versa, I'm always like, if you were to look right now, you will see that there's an equal amount of both. Like you may have some shows that, that are non-LGBT that didn't run as long as, another LGBT show that was a hit did. But when you look at the different types of content, you're seeing almost an equal split of both, and I've always, once I accepted, because it took me a while to accept and to be okay with producing LGBT content in the beginning. I was not, like when I did my first film, which had like a little bit of an LGBT storyline. I remember telling my producers before we started shooting, I said, we're gonna do this film, but I'm not gonna put my name on it. Like I'm gonna come up with a fictional name and say it's directed by that person. Because I was like, I don't know if I want to be associated with LGBT content because of what I learned to be true, which was when you do produce LGBT content, then people like to put that label on you and everything that you do. And if you do anything that's non-LGBT, they think it's inauthentic.
I see what you're saying.
So I have really been, one of my biggest battles has been to get, the public to see me as what I really am. And I actually am, in comparison to some people who all they want to do is LGBT content, and that's great if that's what they want. But for me, that has never been the only thing that I've been interested in and the only thing that I wanted to produce. And so I just wanted the recognition for who I actually was and what my brand actually was.
Gotcha.
I didn't want people to try to say I was just one thing when I knew that I was more than that. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
And so when you say, moving forward, what does it look like? I'm doing what I've always done. Like I have a new slate of shows. I just moved to New York because after 5 years, Atlanta was just not working for my career goals and the goals for my company. This was not working. Like there's a glass ceiling there. People can argue with me about it, but Atlanta's not working for my career goals. And so finally I shifted production. I shifted my company from Atlanta to New York. And so I just got here just a couple weeks ago, and we have a whole new slate of shows that we're putting out. Almost all new shows. There's one show that's continuing called A Beautiful Cruel Thing, and our Redskin show, which was always shot out of Atlanta. That's like a fan favorite, right now it's been a fan favorite for over a year, but I haven't shot new episodes of that show in a long time because I was just in the middle of this big transition.
Gotcha.
With my company and where I wanted to go next and what that was going to look like. So I kind of put a lot of shows like on hold or I canceled them. But Redskin is a show that is not canceled. That one may continue. We're just trying to figure out where I want to shoot that. Do I want to shoot in New York or not? So despite those two shows, we have a whole new slate of shows, and it is what it's always been, which is mixed. You know what I mean? Mixed
Gotcha.
Content. You have some shows that are LGBT because I felt like I spent years cultivating, an LGBT audience. So I don't want to totally stop producing content for them. For the ones who do turn to me for a certain type of content, I don't want to stop producing content for them. So I'm going to continue producing some LGBT shows, but I'm also going to spend just as much time as I always have producing, other, types of content and other genres, that would attract other audiences. So, in particular, I've always been drawn to like urban dramas, like I just love urban dramas, dark dramas. But I also one day want to do a Western, I want to do a musical. There's one show that I'm trying to develop now. It's called Ballads and Blues, and it's not an LGBT story. It's about a group of musicians. So I kind of want that to be like my musical, So I'm just continuing to just expand and really do what I've always done if I can kind of get out of the shadows of just these LGBT hits that I'm known for. Now, I'm thankful for the hits, but, they're not the totality of what I'm about. So I'm just continuing on the journey that I've always been on in a new city that offers new opportunities, So.
And and the thing about it is, I also observed, along with wanting to do a Western and a musical, you also wanted to do one of your goals is to do a foreign language film. Is that correct?
Oh, yes. I am, getting back to the name of the company, the Art House. I learned over the years that at my core, I'm an art house filmmaker. Like I'm the guy who's producing some little obscure like art film. You know what I mean? Like I'm that guy. Like I love art films. I love art house films about, some obscure story about some character on, the fringes of society that has some really innovative cinematography or innovative editing or whatever. I love, films like that, So in my own career, I really want to, fully realize, that which I love. You know what I mean? I love art films, So I do think that's one reason why cinematography has become like an identifier in my work, because I really do make a conscious effort to try to give every single project of mine, whether it's a film, whether it's a series, its own distinct visual look,
Yes.
Because that is what's, that's one of the things that film's about is film is a visual medium. So you have to really there's a, you really got to put a lot into that, as the artist. So I try to do that in my work, and I want to, with the audience that I have, and I really think that I'm starting to, like, as I continue on, my audience is becoming more fine-tuned,
Yes. Yes.
And I'm developing an audience that does like, the LGBT stuff along with the non-LGBT stuff. I'm really starting to fine-tune that audience, and that's the audience that I really want is the type of audience that no matter what the story's about, just because you like my artistic voice, you're going to check it out. That's the audience that I want. I don't want the audience that you're only a fan because of the LGBT stuff.
The more I think about that, I think it's because of the fact, isn't that the average? Because if you think about it, most people who actually do like the LGBT content you produce, most LGBT don't watch everything of LGBT. They kind of go off and they watch many other things, many other shows that may not necessarily contain the LGBT. So to me, I'm thinking to myself, the where you go with your art, because that's what it is beautiful art.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But with the LGBT audience, and this is one of my gripes with the audience at large, is they do not they do not really want you to be anything else. You know what I mean? Or I remember when we were doing when Freefall, I switched the concept of Freefall from being like this stupid roommate love triangle like comedy drama bullshit, and I switched it and said I want Freefall to be like The Wire, right? And so I switched the concept around when we went and did our official first season, which is how a lot of people didn't even know about our preseason. A lot of people came on when we did the preseason and we started the first official season, and our audience had gotten bigger. So we have some people who missed the preseason who've only known us to be a crime drama series. But the people who were introduced to us prior, when we switched to a crime drama, they were like, "What the hell is this? Why would you make them be into like crime and like there's violence and drugs and all that?" And I'm like, and those fans were saying, "Oh, the show is too complicated to follow. Like, why can't it go back to being a simple, with them just throwing shade at each other and all that?" And I would always comment that year. I spent a lot of time commenting and telling them, "Do you watch Scandal?
Right.
You watch Scandal, right? So why can't I do the same thing with LGBT characters that anybody else is doing, like with the show like Scandal? Like why does LGBT content only have to be like a couple things and that's it? And so when I'm presenting, a crime drama, you know what I mean, with very, with kind of complex to be indie and to have, little resources at the time, we were doing some complex like storylines, on Freefall. Why can't I do that and have you be open to it?
Well, you can. You can.
So in a lot of ways, the LGBT audience really wants you to only be a couple things, and they don't really want you to expand and be experimental and all of that. And as the artist, you think that you're being cutting edge and pushing the genre forward. It's just that now you're featuring Black LGBT characters, but the audience is not open to those changes. And it's like, well, aren't I a filmmaker too? Like, why can't I create a
Well, this is what I'm going to say to you about that. One thing I've learned, and this is with Auntie Oprah, when Oprah was interviewing Lady Gaga, and one thing about that I totally walked away with a certain respect for artists who gets to that level. Mm-hmm. They no longer ask for permission. And when it comes to Lady Gaga in particular, she said something that Oprah completely agreed with. She said, you have to learn when to turn off the noise. And in many respects, social media is a great tool to give you the momentum of your show, to give the momentum of a podcast or whatever you're creating. Yeah. But it can be rhetoric and noise. And you got to also learn when to turn it off. So to me, learning when to turn it off is exactly what I think every person who's trying to get to that level, where they really want to be, you got to learn when to cut it off. And I think, honestly, the work that you have produced, I want to see a lot more of it. And yes, the average LGBT fan, it's great to see yourself on film, just like the big premiere of Black Panther. They have never, and trust me, gay people will be sitting in that audience too. They have never seen a production of this magnitude of a budget, and they have never seen any Marvel comic full on production and talent being African American.
Yes.
So because of that, I think we're now going to be seeing a complete revolution. I think we're now seeing that with the first African American president being portrayed in a beautiful art. I think there's something evolving. I think there's something coming out that we just haven't quite been ready for, but it's coming. And I think the path that you're going by doing other than just LGBT, trust me, it's going to get us respects. It's just the fact that everything, especially in the beginning, takes time. It takes time.
And I have for all of the projects that I've done that have been non-LGBT over the years, I've gotten, like I guess the respect for it. It's just a smaller audience, so they're not as loud. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And and that's something that's still a work in progress. But to what you were saying a second ago about the noise, I actually believe that in order to be innovative at all, in order to be groundbreaking at all, in order to truly create a piece of art, whether it does well or whether it doesn't do well, quote unquote well, you don't listen to the noise at all. At all. Because I believe if I ever listened to the noise, you know what I mean, I don't think I would have ever created any of the LGBT products that I've ever created, because the audience would have never asked for anything that I created. You know what I mean? I think one reason why I've done well is I've brought stories that you didn't even really think of. You know what I mean? Like I brought those out. I'm like, oh wow, like I never would have thought of like that story, but here it is. Okay, I'm open to it. You know, I think when you listen to the noise, especially going in, and you're listening to the streets in your creation period and trying to figure out, which is some people feel like that's a great strategy. You know what I'm saying? But and sometimes you find success when you listen to the streets. You know what I mean? But for me, if you're trying to be, like I said, if you're trying to be innovative, you're trying to be cutting edge, you're trying to bring something new to the game that is truly organic and authentic, then you just go off of your own intuition. You know what I mean? And hit them with something new. Like there are things that you will do that will be ahead of its time. You know, like when I was speaking before about Freefall and feeling underappreciated.
Yeah.
I know that, years later, I think I will see that appreciation. Because I do think that Freefall was ahead of its time. So yeah, I absolutely agree. And so I'm pumped. I'm pumped for, I always say that I do always feel, pumped for the future. I'm somebody who always looks for my next adventure, both like in all ways, personally, professionally, creatively. And so I'm in a new city. My company is in a new city. We're basing most of our productions out of New York. There will be a couple that will be produced in LA. Just released a new series that I co-wrote with my creative partner, Gino Brooks in LA, called Jones, which was inspired by Love Jones.
So there we go. Okay.
Check it out, because we just released it early this morning. But I think it's dope. I think we've come the closest with that show at capturing, and I shot that whole show, so it's my cinematography. We've come the closest out of anybody over the years at capturing the essence of that movie Love Jones into a series.
Wow.
I really do believe that we've come the closest. So
okay.
So I'm just going to continue to do what I've always done, but I'm definitely always looking for the next adventure in my career, and creatively and artistically. I'm staying away from labels, a lot of labels, I do want to be, the one label that I do cherish and appreciate is the Art House label, because I think that best defines who I am as a filmmaker and who I am as a creator, So you'll probably never catch me doing something that's really like mainstream, You always will. Everything that I do will always have that indie artsy grit to it, because I feel like that's me.
Wow.
And I just appreciate anybody, whoever they are, whatever walk of life, that has any sort of appreciation for what I've done or what I'm trying to do with my work. And I've made my peace with wherever that ends up taking my career.
Right.
Like I used to have put a lot of pressure on myself. Like I said earlier in the conversation, you couldn't tell me that I wasn't the next Spike Lee or the next John Singleton. But over the years, I realized, like all of you're Lamont Pierrie, and there's never going to be another Lamont Pierrie, and you do not need to hold yourself to other people's successes. You don't. What you do and what you're doing and whatever God has in store for your career will be what it is. Man. So I'm at a more peaceful place than I've ever been in all the years, like I said, the 14 years that I've been doing this. I've never been at a more peaceful place with my life and my career as a filmmaker. So, the future is bright.
Awesome. You know what, Lamont, let me tell you, one thing's for sure, you have definitely captured a supporter and a fan of your work. And let me tell you, I can honestly say I'm going to be seeing a lot more from you. And it's going to be outside of the LGBT, regardless of what. And guess what? Everyone, because like you just mentioned, Pollock, when it came down to his work, I believe that you will definitely see, because now, you may have had Noah's Ark, but now, guess what else you got? You're getting great production. Who's All About Jane, I believe.
A lot of people don't realize. I bet a lot of his fan base doesn't realize that he was a writer on Being Mary Jane, which is a very well done show.
Yes, it was. Yes, it is. And I think that is exactly the same path I see you. And guess what?
Yeah.
I'm going to be right there watching all the way. Agree with you, giving us a different insight and giving us a different view of, one, our own selves, as well as art. Just exactly what it is, art. And like I said, I'm going to be watching everything you do. So, and by the way, where can they reach you if they want to watch more of your work, and where exactly can they follow you?
Well, the main place you can follow anything I do is www.thearthousetv.com. And I think that takes you to like our YouTube page. But from there, you can find our main platform, our subscription platform, which is where our full episodes and our archives of shows that we've done over the years are. And then on social media, you can find me at, Lamont Pierrie, Lamont Pierrie on Twitter, and then the Cinematic Poet on Instagram, and then of course the Art House TV. You type in Art House TV, that'll take you to many places, and you'll find us. So,
thank you. Again, this has been actually a very honest and I have the privilege of actually getting some great guests who are completely honest about what it is that they're doing, how they feel about certain things, and I think it actually, like I said, gives us a little bit more of a kind of a view to where we can kind of look inside and also take a little scrutiny in terms of what we're really paying more attention to. And is that really going to be something that we're going to walk around hailing proudly through the years? So thank you so much for coming on the show, Lamont. You really made this a very interesting conversation. Again, look for this look for the podcast to be posted very soon. This is Chris signing off with Mr. Lamont Pierrie from Brothaspeak Podcast. Have a great one, everybody.